It's 4 in the morning, April 16, 1945. Along the Oder River, east of Berlin, the night doesn't just end, it shatters. An eruption of light and sound as more than 40,000 Soviet guns open fire at once. The ground heaves. The air itself seems to rip apart. Entire German positions are swallowed by a rolling wall of fire, so dense and continuous it feels like the world is unmaking itself. There are no pauses, no gaps, and certainly no mercy. Soldiers dig themselves into the earth, hands clamped over their helmets, a futile gesture against the apocalypse. This isn't just an attack, it's the end of a story. For Germany, there are no flanks left to turn, no strategic reserves to rush to the front, no more land to trade for precious time. They have reached the final, brutal stage of modern warfare, total encirclement. There is no escape. Inside Berlin, the city holds its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Basements and subway tunnels have become makeshift shelters, crammed with civilians. The streets above are a chaotic maze of rubble, abandoned vehicles, and desperate refugees fleeing the approaching storm. The air is thick with the smell of smoke, dust, and raw fear. On the streets, the last line of defense is the Volksturm boys barely old enough to shave, armed with rifles too big for them, and old men with armbands standing behind barricades that couldn't possibly stop a tank. They aren't defenders, they are witnesses to the end. Deep beneath the city, in the Führerbunker, the war has become a grim theater. On the maps, thick red arrows now form a complete circle around Berlin. There are no blue lines left to represent German forces, only symbols for divisions that existed. Name only, phantom armies on a piece of paper. Hitler still barks orders, but they echo into a void. His generals see what he refuses to accept. Command itself has become irrelevant. The war is no longer guided by decisions. It moves with its own terrifying momentum. Like a landslide that has already broken free, Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel signs orders that are completely detached from the reality on the ground. General Helmuth Weidling, given the impossible task of defending the capital, understands the truth within hours. Berlin cannot be held, not for weeks, not even for days, maybe, just maybe, for a few more hours. Yet he fights on, not to win, that was never an option, but to delay the inevitable, to buy a little more time, for reasons no one could clearly articulate. On the surface, combat devolves into its most primitive form. It's a fight for every building, every floor, every room. Hand grenades are lobbed down stairwells, and submachine guns chatter in the darkness. Soviet units advance with methodical precision, their infantry supported by tanks and artillery firing at point-blank range, blasting holes in buildings to create new paths forward. German resistance is sporadic but fierce. Pockets of die-hard defenders fighting with the courage of the damned. But it's fragmented, uncoordinated. This isn't an army fighting a battle anymore. It's a nation collapsing in on itself. The final illusion dies quietly on April 22nd. In a moment of rare clarity, Hitler admits to his inner circle that the war is lost. But the admission doesn't last. He retreats back into a fantasy world, dreaming of miracle armies and dramatic breakouts that will never come. Germany has tried every option, fought every fight, and exhausted every possibility. The focus of the German high command shifts. The new objective isn't victory, but surrender. The question is no longer how to win, but who captures whom. Wherever possible, units try to retreat westward, hoping to be captured by the Americans or the British rather than facing the wrath of the Soviets. The last bridges are clogged with soldiers and civilians fleeing the destruction in the east. Orders from the top are now routinely ignored, not out of mutiny, but out of a basic instinct for survival. This is the last act of military command, choosing the least terrible ending. On April 30th, 1945, in his bunker, Adolf Hitler takes his own life. The sound of the gunshot is lost in the thunder of the battle raging just a few streets away. The fighting doesn't stop. It continues for days, fueled by momentum and confusion. Finally, General Alfred Jodl signs the instrument of unconditional surrender. The document is simple, the words final. There are no conditions left to negotiate, no terms to debate. The war in Europe ends not with a single, decisive battle, but with total, systemic exhaustion. It simply runs out of fuel. In the years that followed, German generals would reflect on their defeat, not with shock, but with a cold, analytical clarity. They had fought well. They had planned brilliantly at times. They had adapted and innovated. But in the end, none of it mattered. The war had grown larger than tactics, larger than courage, larger than any single nation could bear. They weren't just defeated by an enemy army. They were defeated by scale. They were crushed by the weight of continents, by the output of factories on the other side of the world, by logistics that never stopped, and by a river of manpower that never ran dry. Modern wars are not won by battlefield genius alone. They are not won by the courage of soldiers alone. They are won by systems, by industrial might, by the sheer, overwhelming weight of resources. And Germany, standing almost alone against the industrial power of the entire world, had been fighting the end long before the final battle ever reached the streets of Berlin. The last, desperate fight only confirmed what was already inevitable. Thanks for watching. If you found this perspective on history interesting, consider subscribing for more.